Scrambling a little bit yesterday and today. We're happily anticipating 1.5 inches of rain Monday, Tuesday. So we had some tomatoes that were breaking color. Normally we pick more of a red tomato because we're marketing locally, but we did kind of get the riper fruit off the vine. So the fellas are packing tomatoes this afternoon. They pack one layer by size, by count. So they're working, the tomatoes are picked in the plastic field baskets and come in here. This long, simple belt packs a lot of product off this ranch. It's simple, but it keeps product moving. If something we need a sticker, size, sort, throw out stuff, this belt works pretty good. As we walk through, you'll be able to see that. Anybody in and out of the cooler? Or?
Might as well. It's cold already. I can feel it.
Good.
Is the factory here?
There's a apple or a juice company over in Watsonville called H.A. Ryder. So we take our apples over there. We're probably one of their smaller runs. You know, they'll crush and bottle our apples within a day. You know, they're usually doing larger scale juice production. But we blend 3 or 4 of our different varieties of apples, and we play with it every year. This is more Johnny Gold, has a little bit of Braeburn, which is a higher acid apple, and has a little bit of Fuji. They're pretty high sugar apples, and a little bit of Gala.
So that's where all the sweetness comes from.
Probably from the Fujis, and we try to limit that. Johnny Gold is kind of a nice neutral, has good sugar, a balance of acid, but yeah, just a nice balance. Everybody out?
You're still in there.
Okay.
Question about the potatoes. How long do you keep them before you ship them to like somewhere? Because like, I don't know if it's the cold that makes them like sprout faster, or is
it'll hold the sprouting back, but they tend to change a little. We don't like to keep them super cold.
Yeah.
We'll sometimes bring them out and let them warm up again and kind of cycle them in and out. So they will get a little bit sugary sometimes, and they can develop some interior problems if they're too cold for a long time. Am I locking anybody in?
Can you get out if you get locked in?
Yeah. So this is the line set up for tomato packing. This little bin dumper and small packing line is mainly for onions, when we're packing onions. Yeah. The boxes over here are onions. You saw the tomatoes. Our label for our product is Pinnacle. So that's the brand that we have on our boxes. Somebody asked, they saw the meat company on the cooler, wondered if we have livestock. These are just some inexpensive cold storage that we run at 55 degrees, generally for tomatoes. When to start us?
You mentioned that you put liquid fertilizer into the line sometimes. Do you make your own ever, or is it all just market?
We do have a compost tea maker that we can take our compost and make compost tea. If it's more of a nutrient, we will buy that, you know, if it has analysis on it, yeah. Cool. I mentioned that onions were a pretty important crop for us. So we have onions in here that have come out of cold storage. They'll go through a sweat, and in a couple days they're ready to pack. This is some of our apple juice. We just had our apple juice run a few weeks ago. They will move into the cooler. It doesn't need to be in the cooler, but they're just stored under the covered area for now. So the question was, why do the onions sweating? Because they've been in this cold storage unit that we run at 32 degrees, and we try to keep the humidity between 60 and 70. So that allows the onion to really stay dormant, and we'll have our long day varieties that we can still move into sales next April, May sometimes. So it keeps the onions in really good quality. So when we harvest them, they're at peak quality. We can't always fit them inside the cold storage, but we can put a lot of them in here. This cold storage will hold about 600 bins. We also have shallots that we handle just like onions. And then we have some potatoes that are just cycling in here shortly for tuber moth. Make sure we don't have any tuber moth problems with them. So anyway, the question was, why the sweating? So the onion's in here at 32 degrees. It goes outside into ambient temperature. They tend to build up a little bit of moisture on the outside. And so we either get them out in the sun or we run the fans on them. And usually in a couple day time, that light free moisture is gone, and then we can pack them.
So cool, Bill.
Most of our small vegetable seed is planted. These are an old style planter, John Deere 33s. They're a plate planter. They're very good at singulating. We'll plant raw onion seed with these. Today they planted broccoli, kohlrabi, and I think turnips. So we have them set up in this correct configuration to do 2 lines on a 40-inch bed. We have another planter set up to do 4 lines. That would be for carrots, onions, parsnips, beets. Oh, thank you.
Do you want me to hold them?
I'll take one, you take one. So several years ago, kind of was under kind of Jeff's guidance and prompting, we became interested in reducing tillage on our farm. Historically, we've done pretty much the standard tillage with chisel, disc. We have used spaders a lot. Hopefully we'll get a chance to show a spader running. But we had elevated organic matter, and we're just looking to see what other practices might maybe push that organic matter higher, or what might improve our crop production. So we have been looking at different reduced tillage practices. So these 2 implements are vertical tillage. We can run chisels, but it's basically straight disc. So when you have a lot of residue, it helps chop up the residue. We can run chisels to loosen. We have a knife on the front if we need to undercut to dislodge roots to terminate a crop. So these tools have become more and more important in the last couple of years, and it has allowed us to change from so much disking and chiseling to more lighter, higher tillage. So it's not no till by any means, but it is a level of reduced till.
So you've expanded expanded a lot over your time here. I'm wondering if, with like the large upfront capital costs that farming entails, are you kind of like working to start making a profit soon? Or are you kind of like in the area?
We made profit for many years. We're just on a 2 or 3 year slump at the moment for various reasons. Costs have gone up. A cost that we're really proud that has gone up is our labor costs, because the goal is to get more money back to the people who work on the farm. So somebody that works year round maybe will work 22 to 2,600 hours. They're now able to make $50,000, $60,000, $65,000 a year. But in doing so, that does cost the farm. And if you have other costs that go up that you don't have much control over, then those can sometimes catch you off guard. And if you have a couple years where yields are not quite as good, the drought maybe has caught up with us a little bit, so we need to make some adjustments to that. So we have had a lot of profitable years that allowed us to kind of make capital improvements. And even in the last few years, we had a pretty good war chest built up to kind of sustain us through a few years that were on the downside. But now we're to the point we want to get on the profitable side again. Somebody asked about liquid material. We do have a compost tea maker, 500-gallon compost tea maker. We can take our compost and make a liquid extract from our compost. This is a strip tiller. This is a Yetter strip tiller. There's 4 units here. If we want to do 4 40-inch beds, the top portion, a 10-inch strip. If we have a cover crop that we've mowed and left on the bed, we can run this strip tiller and just open up a little area and then plant in that area. It works best for us when we're following a vegetable crop and going to a cover crop is when it works the best. It will work in cropping systems if you're planting transplants. Some larger direct seeds can also work, but this tool is helpful for reducing tillage. We're still learning how to make it work best to our benefit.
Phil, I got a question for you. Can I also film it?
Yeah.
It's great. Okay. So how do you make known your practices about how you farm to wholesalers, grocery stores, the public? How do you do that?
Well, our customers, it's pretty easy to invite them to the farm for a field trip, and that's always been beneficial. So we've had Whole Foods come, we've had some of our, like the New Leaf markets, they have a chain of 4, 5, 6 markets. We can get their produce people all come for a tour, let them see what's going on. It's good for our customers to know that we're not a factory, we are a farm. We have ups and downs, and then it's also good for us to know what goes on in the produce department, so what kind of needs that they have. So it's a nice relationship when you have direct sales, because you can really have nice discussions with your buyer. The public, we don't do a lot of tours in general, but we do quite a few educational, for schools. The UC the apprenticeship program, until the COVID hit, they were pretty much coming every year for a tour of the farm. So we can get some tours of the farm in that way so the public can kind of see. If we have local politicians that are interested, sometimes you have to really drag them along and explain stuff to them, but there is an interest there that we like to get involved with.
Nice. And have you been able to fill niche markets that were difficult to fill in grocery stores? It's probably a tough question.
Well, I'm trying to think how to answer it exactly. I mean, we do some small-scale things, and we do try some things. It's probably better to learn how those work at a farmer's market, but we do have a few stores that are willing to try some new varieties, try some different things, see how our quality fits in. So I think with the relationship we have, the ability to do that is much greater.
Thank you.
So this is our compost yard. It's a 4-acre site. we developed this. We found this location because it was close to our shop yard. It's an ideal slope. It has very little cross slope, and it has a 2 to 3% slope downhill, so water can drain off. Right now, these windrows on the east side of the yard are finished. They were started last early summer. So we are spreading compost today, pulling out of this windrow. We have a couple more that are finished, and then we have some that are still in the process of finishing. So these windrows are about 400 foot long. There's about 200 tons of compost in a windrow.
Touch it.
Yeah. There's still some material that's still not broken down in here. Some of these are carbon, but they're pretty fragile. They'll break pretty easy. So the covers help with moisture management. So they keep it moist right to the outside, especially in the summer months when we do have the covers on. In the winter, when we get the nice rain early in the week, this will shed the water so we don't get them too saturated in the winter.
Does it get hot? Like, it's not a hot compost, is it?
We're doing aerobic thermophilic compost. So we want to be in that 130 to 150 degree range in the beginning stages of breakdown. So, we'll hit those temperatures, but then as you go through breakdown and you start going to the build-up stages, the temperatures will drop down. You'll be 110, 190, and when you're down to 70, 80 degrees, that's what we call finished compost.
That's wild.
That is great.
Has there been a particular amendment to compost that's helped the most to get the most out of your soil organic matter? Or?
From applying the compost?
Yeah, is there one specific ingredient to your compost that's helped a lot?
No, I think I don't isolate ingredients. So the manures are a nice component. The vegetable products are good components. So it's a diverse feedstock. I think gives you a chance to make maybe a higher quality compost. People might make good compost with dairy manure and a carbon material and can be very good compost. It's just for us to add some extra feedstocks that we can do easy enough. To get set up to make compost, you need to have the equipment, you need to have a little bit of know-how, you need to have the site, and you need to have feedstock. So feedstocks can change from location depending what's available. Dairy manure, the green material, or cull vegetables were always available from the beginning, so that's what we kind of build our compost around. This is Manuel Estrada that's coming with the compost spreader now. He's the ranch compost meister. He's the one responsible for making all the compost. So this is kind of what we're tending to do more of in the last few years. It's part of some reduced disturbance. So this field is staying in 80-inch beds. It was in cover crop last winter. Some of it was spaded, some of it was reduced till with the strip tiller. We had hard squash planted in here, so some of the butternut you saw in the shop yard came out of this field. And then after the crop was harvested, traditionally we would probably come in and disc and chisel and then prepare to plant a cover crop. But we realized that's not necessary. We can get by with a lot less tillage. So this was just mowed. We did run the vertical tillage tool with the undercutting knife, and that's pretty much all we've done here. With the rain we get Monday or Tuesday, that should put some moisture in the ground, germinate some weeds. After that, we can run a power harrow lightly to break up the germinated weeds, and then we're ready to plant cover crop. So we can turn ground a lot easier if we don't do quite as much tillage. And that's probably one of the biggest benefits we've seen in the last few years with reduced tillage. I see your nice strip tiller over there, Jeff. I was going to stop, but I think we'll keep moving.
Got a lot, yeah, because there's a lot too. I know you got a lot more. You're going to get back in the van, or not?
Yeah.
Or you, because I thought you said you wanted.
Well,
where's your route?
We'll walk a big loop.
All right. Oh my goodness. All right.
So if we are working ground with a little more tillage, we use a crawler tractor. This is kind of an older one. Here's a disc that we used for several years. This disc was pretty much parked. We have started to use a little bit more because we have some perennial weed problems that are necessitated. It's needing us to start going back and doing a little more tillage. So we're using a deep undercutting knife, and when we do that, we've kind of lifted the soil to level it off to make beds. We'll use the disc, but we're still pretty limited on the amount we use the disc. This is a small pear block. The main variety in here is Warren. It's kind of a dessert pear, a very, very good quality pear. But this is kind of typical of how we've done our orchards for the last 5 years, where we have not tilled. So this orchard floor hasn't been tilled now for a number of years, but we're starting to go back and do some light tillage in every other middle. It'll allow us to get our compost buried a little bit deeper and to get a better cover crop established.
Did you specifically plan on seeding your broccoli today, anticipating the rain to come?
Yes, it was scheduled for this week. We had a little bit of rain earlier in the week. It just dried out enough. We generally don't work Sundays, but we're probably going to work some tractor work tomorrow to be ahead of the rain. Hey, Efren. Hi, Efren. Yeah, we're going to be close to, if you have a chance to run the spader in the next 10 or 15 minutes.
Yes, let me send Jose right now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Don't let that burrito catch up with you.
I'm all like, I don't know if we can help that.
Oh my goodness. There he is.
How does combating combating disease and pathogens, is that a big factor at your farm, or is it really not a problem at all?
It's probably a factor on all farms. We do have some soil diseases. Verticillium for certain crops is an issue. It probably pushed our melon and watermelon production off of this ranch to our other farm location that doesn't have a history of verticillium. It's just that we have had a cropping rotation prior to me being here that probably accentuated verticillium. For peppers and tomatoes, they're resistant to it, but some crops are not good resistance. I think our rotation takes us a long way. Our cover cropping takes us a long way to mitigating some of those issues. Foliar diseases, we still have issues. Powdery mildew. We need to do preventative treatment in peppers and tomatoes with sulfur to really stay ahead of the powdery mildew. Downy mildew can be an issue. Some varieties have resistance to downy mildew, some don't. We don't do basil at other ranch location because we get more marine influence from Monterey Bay, and it tends to be more of a downy mildew problem here. But if we grow it here in hoop houses, it's not a problem. So having two different locations, moving crops around, all those things are beneficial. Foliar diseases like insect pests, if you're doing succession plantings and you have the ability to plant your successions upwind, it's a very subtle benefit, but it will give you a little bit of benefit because things tend to move with the wind, and it's a little bit harder to move upwind. So if something starts in a planting and you're working upwind, it's not that it won't move upwind, but it's less of it gives you a little bit of a leg up on diseases and pest insects. These are parsnips. Carrots are an important crop for the farm. We do about 15 acres of a variety. It's a Nance variety. It's a very tasty carrot. The big carrot growers don't do it because they're all mechanical harvested, and a Nance carrot has a very delicate top, so they have to be hand dug. And so both sides here were carrots. We usually put carrots or parsnips in plantings of 3 or 4 and move after that because of carrot fly issues. So we don't want carrot fly to build up. If we just kept planting in adjacent, the carrot fly could be more of a problem. Most of the farm is on drip irrigation. Every field can be run on drip, and it's part of what we do to protect our water here. This field came out of onions. The portion you see a lot of residue left on the surface. We didn't have to do much tillage after the onion crop, and that is just a 180-inch bed power harrow. It's just making one pass, getting the field leveled off, kind of like this is here, and we're ready for rainfall. Once we get rain on this, germinate weeds. This is very close to planting cover crop. So within the next month, this should be planted to cover crop. The darker area in here, all of this had heavy perennial morning glory that kind of got away from us with reduced till practices. So we had to run the undercutting knife in here at about 15 to 18 inches several times in the late summer to try to knock that back a little bit. So that's why there was a lot more soil disturbance in here. But this essentially was undercut, disc. We made our beds one pass with the power harrow, and now it's getting close to cover crop. Yes.
Jeff said something earlier about you have a really good reputation with your workers, or like something along that line. Like, could you describe